Use your powers for evil.
Your evil is mine.
Hello, and welcome to the inaugural, the pre-show of a brand new Doctor Who podcast. Next stop everywhere. I am Jesse Jackson, and joining me is
Charles Skaggs.
And we are, I think we have been friends, it feels like forever, even though we have probably spent only 5 days in the actual city together.
Total.
But it has been years and years of friendship. And when they asked us if we wanted to talk Doctor Who, we said absolutely.
Yeah, somebody just has to twist my arm to talk Doctor Who.
Yes. So what we want to do is the plan is that we're going to do a weekly podcast. We're going to talk about the newest series that's coming out. We may do some, go back and look at some classic episodes. Basically, think of us as a couple of friends in the living room, drinking your favorite beverage, talking about the Doctor. So, Charles, why don't we start? Tell us how you became obsessed with the Doctor.
Okay. Yeah, I probably should go first since I'm kind of like the veteran Whovian of the two. Let's see. Okay, once upon a time, in the very strange time known as the 1980s, I was basically 15 years old at the time, and it was during the summer, and we went to go visit my aunt and uncle with my parents, and they were off playing cards. All the adults were in another room, and as the only teenager in the house at the time, I was kind of left to my own devices in the living room just watching TV. And way back when, in the Stone Age of television, my aunt and uncle didn't have cable yet, so all they had were at best 5 channels, if you can imagine that dark time back then. And so, desperate for something to watch, while I sat there on the living room reading comic books, I came across part of an episode that I wouldn't learn until later was The Seeds of Doom, a Tom Baker episode. But I didn't learn that until many years later. But for right now, I watched this thing, and I watched this guy. It was taking place in Antarctica, and it was very dark and strange. And there was this guy that became infected with this virus that it was turning him into this plant-like creature for some weird reason. It was mutating into this monster, and he was all freaked out. And I was like, what am I watching? And there wasn't a TV guide handy, but there happened to be a pledge break at the time, because back then on PBS there was a pledge break for just about every 6 weeks or so on PBS. And so I learned it was Doctor Who, and I was like, okay, well, that was kind of weird, but I kind of came in the middle of it, and I didn't get to watch it for more than maybe an hour, a half hour, or hour at best. So I got that image stuck in my head, and then maybe months later, I was bored again, and when we went back home to Medina, and I was, I was off for the weekend. It was Saturday afternoon, and then I happened to come across Doctor Who listed on, our local PBS station out of Cleveland, and so WVIZ, I believe, and then they had, let's see, it was the episode The Keeper of Traken, which was the penultimate Tom Baker episode. And it was also the episode where Mrs. Father, spoilers, regenerates into the Master after being taken over by the Master and his body being, permanently absorbed into the Master. So, and I saw that cliffhanger where Mrs. Father turns into the Master, and I was just like, holy crap. And by that point, that was pretty much hooked me on Doctor Who. And then the next episode after that was Logopolis, where Tom Baker regenerated into Peter Davison. And that blew my mind, because I'm like, holy crap, the lead guy just changed into another guy. What is this show? And from that point on, I started watching the Davison episodes. And so Davison was the first complete Doctor that I watched from beginning to end. So therefore, Peter Davison is my Doctor. So that's my story.
So what's fascinating, Charles, is
I know it's a long one, so apologize for that.
No, that was good. What's fascinating is I think your story echoes a lot of fans that found it on PBS here in America. But, I think it's amazing. It reminds us of a time where you couldn't just go to Google and say, what is this show?
Yeah, exactly.
So you had to pick pieces in a TV guide and going through it. That's pretty cool. So I came from Doctor Who a different way. Charles is one of my friends, and a guy named Ken is the other, that have been longtime Whovians and have been saying, Jesse, you should watch Doctor Who. Jesse, you should watch Doctor Who.
Yes.
And it isn't that I disagreed with him. It's just there's other things going on. And I was listening to... I know. So I was listening to the Signal podcast about Firefly, and someone wrote a letter and suggested that Captain Jack Harkness from Torchwood is really Malcolm Reynolds. And the idea is that they both wear long brown coats, and Captain Jack lives forever. They both are kind of rogues. And I was fascinated by that. So I went to my friend Ken, because he lives in this Dallas area. Because if I lived in Ohio, I would have gone to Charles. And I said, this sounds fascinating. Can I get some Torchwoods? And so he said, well, he had a couple of seasons of Torchwood, and I watched it, and I really liked it. And I said, but I really want to know more about Captain Jack. Can you lend me the episodes of Doctor Who that Captain Jack's in? And Ken said, it's just easier to give you. So he gave me the Eccleston. And so it was on a Christmas day. Everyone was tired, and my lovely bride had already gone to bed. So I said, well, let me start this. And I started watching. And I'm going, wow, this is really good. And so I went through the Eccleston series, and I went through the Tennant series, and I ended up watching all of the Tennant episodes, and I got caught up, and I had saved all the Tennant specials on the DVR, and I didn't watch any of them till I was caught up, and then I watched them all, and I got to watch him. And so Matt Smith was my first Doctor I got to see from beginning to end, but the new Doctor, and I'm going to have to learn how to say Peter Caprio's last name, right, is the first time that I've been involved with all the speculation of, like, who's going to be the Doctor, what's going on, because by the time everyone had announced Matt Smith. So I came through Torchwood and have become, I was a Star Trek guy, and I still am, but I have just become obsessed with the Doctor. There is just so much unique about the show and so much different that it is just something I love watching and love talking about.
Well, we're very glad you finally came around to our way of thinking, and you will be like us.
Yes.
To quote the Cybermen.
So, Tennant, I think, would be my favorite Doctor. Even though Eccleston was the first one I watched, there's just something about David Tennant that I just loved. And I know that does not make me unique in America fans. But I've really enjoyed Matt Smith's tenure as the Doctor. I've loved his enthusiasm and the way he plays the character, that he's thinking 2 or 3 statements ahead of everyone else.
The thing I love, I think I totally agree with that. The thing I love most about Matt Smith is that he and David Tennant to that same extent is that that, like you said, they are they're always like 20 steps ahead of everybody else, and the smartest person in the room. And I think that's what I think a lot of fans find so interesting about the Doctor, is that he, like it's like Craig Ferguson, expressed it, how it's like intellect and romance triumphing over brute force and cynicism, which I just love that expression. and it's become like a great mantra to sum up Doctor Who so succinctly. But yeah, I think it appeals to fans in the same way that Sherlock Holmes appeals to fans. Is that it's not just some guy. It's not like Batman or somebody like beating somebody up, and it's using their brain to and using their intellect to be victorious over whatever threat they're facing. And I think that's one of the more appealing things about Doctor Who is that it's not the same old rough and tumble. It's something more unique and more special, and so that's my take on it anyway.
Well, and another thing that Charles and I have in common is we are both big fans of James Robinson's Starman.
Yes.
And one of the reasons why, not only is it great stories and wonderful art, but he did not ignore continuity. He embraced the fact that there were multiple characters named Starman in the past in the DC universe, and he incorporated all of them into their story. And as much as I love, James Bond and, our Pierce Brosnan and all the other guys who've played the character, you kind of have to accept the fact that we're rebooting it each time. And the Doctor doesn't. It embraces the fact that this is the same character for the past 50 years.
And that was one of the biggest fears in 2005 when the show returned after that long, horrible hiatus from 1989, although we got that break in 96 with Paul McGann's TV movie that unfortunately was not picked up because Fox is Fox. And I could just rattle off that for a half an hour about my problems with Fox. But then, it's 9 long years after that the show finally returned, and we were all concerned that, would the original stuff actually carry over into the new series? Would it all be basically the same continuity, or is it a reboot, God forbid, or is it is it a standalone that just tries to maybe bring in some elements but really doesn't feel beholden to anything from the past? So that was an initial concern, and so once we started hearing things like Gallifrey and the Time Lords, and we're like, thank you for. And then when the Dalek episode, the first Dalek episode by Robert Shearman, episode 6, arrived, we're like, yes, it counts. It still counts. It's the same show. It's just the 9th Doctor, and we're like, thank you so much. So yeah, that was a nice saving grace for the new series.
Yeah, I totally agree, and one of the beauties and the first of many name droppings that Charles and I will do. We both are big convention attendees, and we've done our share of meeting people and talking to people. But at DragonCon a few years ago, I happened to be walking along, and I see this guy talking to a lady dressed up in a Stargate uniform about why Doctor Who is so amazing. And he's talking about how much it is, it just has so much, and it has everything you want. And I'm listening and I'm watching and I'm going, holy crap. This is, I recognize this guy. Wait a minute. It is why am I drawing a blank, Charles? See, you'll learn this, Charles. Yes. I am horrible with names.
That's okay.
As we do this. The guy from
tell me who is it?
Mark Shepard. So Mark Shepard is there telling them about how Matt Smith is his doctor, and you don't need to go any further, and how wonderful the show is.
Right.
And I'm sitting there going, here is a guy that's been in everything and is so passionate about the Doctor. Yeah. And, and he was lucky enough to say the 2 iconic lines, right? It's bigger on the inside and Doctor Who.
Which is an ultimate, because I believe Shepard is a fan, and a longtime fan.
Yeah.
Which is great.
And, you talked about, Craig Ferguson, and here's a guy that is such a geek about the show.
Mm-hmm.
And as we're recording this, the Doctor has the cover of Entertainment Weekly this week. So our fandom has gone mainstream, but for the longest time, it was kind of our own little special club.
Yeah, and for me, that thing is it's still hard for me to grasp in some ways because, like I said, because being a fan since the 1980s. I mean, back then nobody heard of Doctor Who. I mean, and here I was, like in Ohio, and I knew maybe 2 people that had watched the show, and personally, and you didn't have the internet, so you had to thankfully at the time, like Marvel had a comic book series of Doctor Who that were like reprints from Doctor Who magazine, colorized, and you didn't really if somebody like I would doodle Doctor Who stuff on my like textbook covers in high school and whatnot, and people would always ask me like, "What are you drawing?" Because nobody would recognize it. Like I would draw the TARDIS or whatever, and nobody would say, had no clue what the TARDIS was. Like all I knew back then was like Star Trek and maybe Battlestar Galactica and the A-Team and stuff like that, but no clue about Doctor Who. So yeah, when it didn't really start mainstreaming, I don't think until David Tennant's era, when the show went to BBC America from Sci-Fi, because Sci-Fi had no clue what to do with the show.
Yeah,
and go ahead.
And it's amazing that watching the BBC America, kind of almost the surprise of going, holy moly, we have this treasure that we didn't realize, because in just recently it would not be shown at the same time,
right?
To now reach the point where the 50th anniversary special was broadcast the same place, the announcement of the new Doctor simulcast. I mean, it's just it's crazy.
Yeah, they have actual like premiere specials in Britain to announce Peter Capaldi as the 12th Doctor. Just kind of blows my mind that it's like, okay, it's this big announcement, almost like James Bond. Who's going to be James Bond? It's now who's going to be the next Doctor, and which it was to be fair, I mean that's Britain's always kind of treated it that way.
Yeah,
but certainly not over here. So I mean, it wasn't, like I said, I don't think until David Tennant's era when Matt Smith was announced that those kind of like, oh, new Doctor is coming out, start panicking if you're if you're a fan, because new guy, you're gonna have to figure out how to accept the new guy into your life. But that never really caught on until then, and then now it's just like like you said, it's covers on Entertainment Weekly, and you get articles, like major coverage on the internet, or you'll see something on TV maybe at and when there's a convention in town, and it's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it is amazing that I now go to Dragon Con or Comic Palooza. I know you do now Wizard World, Ohio, before it was Mid Ohio Con.
Right.
And you see tons of cosplays for the Doctors.
Yes, I do. I post them on my blog. Yeah.
Yeah.
Every time I see somebody, I'm like, oh, I mean, there's Clara cosplay, and there's like River Song cosplay, and even last one there was like the Are You My Mummy kid?
Yeah.
From The Empty Child, and I was just like, this is fantastic.
Yeah, in this beginning of around February in the Dallas Comic Con, there was a guy who was doing the War Doctor and looked really good, right. And it's just wonderful how it's meet. I also I've really enjoyed seeing the fans who came in from Matt Smith and their concern about losing the Doctor and changing. And, and I wrote to one, that is the joy and the sorrow of being a Doctor fan, is you lose your Doctor, but you get a new Doctor, and your Doctor remains in your heart.
Right.
I want to hear what you want to say about that, but I did want to quote Neil Gaiman.
Okay.
And if you aren't familiar with who Neil Gaiman is, he's basically written anything you could name and has won any writing award you can have.
Right.
And he talked about, he said when he talked about there shouldn't be anyone famous becoming the Doctor, and I'm quoting him, I want to see the Doctor. I want to be taken by surprise. I want to squint at a photo, the person online, and go, but how could that be the Doctor? Then I want to be amazingly delighted, completely proven wrong. And 6 episodes in, I want to wonder how I could have ever been so blind, because this is the Doctor. Of course it is.
So, there seems to be this cycle of acceptance. Well, first it's almost like the 5 stages where you have like denial, and then grief, and like bargaining, and then finally acceptance of the Doctor. That you start off like, this guy can't be the Doctor. He doesn't look, he's not my Doctor. Like, I hate him. I'm going to go on Twitter and post repeatedly about how much I hate him. And you start watching, and you're like, that first episode is so crucial. For example, like the 11th Hour, Matt Smith's first episode, was such a great episode. It's one of the more stronger first episodes with a new Doctor, in my opinion. And that because with David Tennant had such a strong following, and still does, that there was so many, especially with fangirls, that they're just beside themselves that, oh, Tennant's leaving, how could he, who's this new guy, taking his job away from him, even though it's like, well, that's David Tennant's desire to go off and do something else. But in their eyes, it was, this usurper taking over. And so there's always that initial resistance of steadfastness going, like, I'm not going to like you. I'll see what's going on, or maybe I'll stop watching and somebody will tell me about it. But, I'm resistant to the idea. And then they start watching. And if it's a really good episode, a really strong episode, fans are like, I think at the very least, they're like, okay, maybe I'll go ahead and check out the next episode and see if it's any better. And so they watch the second episode. If they're not completely won over with the new Doctor by the first episode, usually the second episode they're like, okay, I guess I'll keep watching. And by the time like maybe the 6th or 7th comes along, they're like, okay, I'm kind of into this now. Let's see where this goes. And by the time over the course of the season, if there's like a good cliffhanger to the next season, or at least to the Christmas special, then you're like, okay, I'm really excited now. I can't wait to see what happens next season or in the Christmas special. And maybe after a few years later, and various adventures, various Dalek episodes, Cyberman episodes, you name it, this Doctor finally decides, okay, I'm going to do something else. I'm leaving the show. I'm very sorry, blah, blah, blah. And you're suddenly realize, like, oh my God, I don't want this Doctor to die. Who is this new guy that's going to come in and replace him?
Yeah.
So it's just, yeah. And I see this, reaction on Twitter. I watched it when Eccleston changed to Tennant, and then Tennant to Smith, and now Smith to Peter Capaldi. And I'm just banging my head on the table going, oh, people, would you stop? Just try, give the new guy a try. It's not the end of the world. It's, you might like this guy. Yes, he's a little weird. Yes, he's not a Doctor. And I'm sure right now there's a lot of Capaldi, or people seeing Peter Capaldi, and they're like, okay, he's old. Who's this old guy? And not really, connecting that, okay, Peter, or, like John Pertwee, Tom Baker, Patrick Troughton, William Hartnell, they were all, like in that ballpark. It's not really out of the question for a Doctor to be that age again. And so, let's go. We'll see where this goes. But, hopefully, I think Capaldi's enough of a strong enough actor that hopefully it won't be too long before he starts winning fans over.
Yeah, I'm watching The Musketeers on BBC America, and he's wonderful as the Cardinal.
Right.
And I want us to talk about our hopes for the new season, but before we get there, so are you a fan? Are you worried about Stephen Moffat? Or are you because it seems like there's a big backlash of some fans.
Right.
And I think I should establish right away that from my perspective, and knowing Charles, I agree. We love the Doctor, so anything we talk about is going to come from a place of love. And because if we're unhappy with something about an episode overall, we still think any episode of Doctor Who is better than almost anything else.
Just about.
So, and that doesn't mean we're going to be with rose-colored glasses.
Right.
We'll talk about if we have problems, but...
Oh, there are horrible episodes of Doctor Who. But in some ways, that's kind of fun because you can make fun of them, Mystery Science Theater 3000 style. And then next week, though, that's one of the great things about Doctor Who is like, okay, maybe this episode sucked, but next week is going to be something completely different, and it might blow your mind. And it might be like the best episode ever. So it's that kind of fun roller coaster ride that makes Doctor Who so, engrossing, at least to me.
So what's your opinion of the Moffat era?
Moffat
so far.
I think overall, Stephen Moffat gets kind of a little bit too much flack from fans. Now, it's not to say that some of it isn't deserved, in my opinion. This is just my opinion, so don't start bombarding me with hate mail going, oh, you like Moffat, or you must die. But no, the way I see it is that Moffat, especially with that first season with Matt Smith, that was such a strong first season. And it showed that, after Russell T Davies, Russell T Davies being such a overall great writer, although there were some episodes that, maybe he wasn't the best at, especially in anything involving the Slitheen. But with Moffat taking over for him, there was always that concern about, will the show's quality continue? And I think that first season proved that, yes, it can continue, because obviously Matt had a good run. People kept watching the show. It actually, it ended up getting this, movie premiere with the 50th anniversary special. So it's, as though I know a lot of fans would say, oh, the show's dying. It's the word, it's going down the tubes. It's done that off and on. It has ups and downs like any other long-running TV show. And with last season, this previous season, I think that Matt's decision to leave, and it's kind of like, I think there was some it seems like there was some hesitance on his part, because it seemed like they were kind of dragging it out, and he wasn't sure if he was going to come back for another season for a while there, because there would be those long hiatuses, frustratingly so. And then, but then that Series 7 kind of was so uneven. Some episodes were good, some episodes were bad, and I think it was just the problem was that some of the writing wasn't up to snuff, and there wasn't a big blow away moment. And I think that Moffat kind of drew out Matt's final episodes, splitting into you've got the name of the Doctor, you've got the day of the Doctor, you've got the lounging at the pool with the Doctor, then you finally got the time of the Doctor where he regenerates. But and even that was kind of like this it felt overdrawn and drawn out, and it wasn't, in my opinion, it wasn't as satisfying as it could have been.
And are you a Clara fan?
I am a Clara fan, especially when I think she won me over right there early on with the Asylum of the Daleks as Oswin, because here was this just adorable girl in the red dress talking about souffles, and how could you not be charmed? Listening to Habanera, and you're like, how can you not be charmed by that? And and Jenna Coleman is just, as far as she's fun, she's perky without being annoying, in my opinion, and she's got a very, as far as I'm concerned, she has a very likable personality, and she comes off well in interviews, and I saw in Ferguson, and just all right, see her on BBC American, just adorable as all get out. So, and then it just seemed that it was a little frustrating because I wanted to see more of Clara right away, and then we still had to go through these final 5 episodes with the pawns. So I think that was a little frustrating.
Now, I'm a big fan of the pawns. I loved a married couple being on the TARDIS.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very happy with their send-off. Maybe because, I had guessed it, what was going to happen. But I do think in a lot of ways it felt a weird timing of the 2 half seasons, kind of the pawn send-off and then the new companion. It was a weird timing.
Mm-hmm. And then you have those breaks, like after the pawns leave, you've got a hiatus to the Christmas special until Clara shows up. And then there's the Christmas special, and then you've got another hiatus until her first real official episode, because that was a surprise. That wasn't really Clara, quote unquote. We only find out later that, oh yeah, it's just this time splintered fragment of her. And the real Clara doesn't really show up until the Bells of St. John. So it just, yeah, there was just this frustrating, I don't know, I want to say procrastination almost, but it was like it just seemed overly drawn out, and the way the seasons were structured just kind of affected everything, and it wasn't as smooth as it should have been. So now there's a real chance that, okay, we're getting 12 straight episodes with Peter Capaldi and Clara in Series 8, and now I think there's hopefully it'll be a much more smoother run. There's some brand new writers this season, which I think is a great thing, because obviously I don't think the writing was up to snuff last in Series 7. So there's always that chance that, hey, new blood comes in and maybe we'll get something as good as like Neil Gaiman's first episode, The Doctor's Wife. So we'll see.
So do you have any specific hopes for this new season? Any wishes on your, Doctor Who Christmas list?
I think that with Peter Capaldi and the way his costume is and his the rollout of his Doctor is going, it feels like there's this strong desire to go back to a more traditional Doctor. It's not just young guy running around all frantic and doing weird, being like overly eccentric and goofy. It's a much more serious Doctor, I think. And obviously the trailers seem to hint that it's going to be a little bit darker, which, it's I think it's going to give fans a little hesitation, and I can understand that and respect it, but I hope that doesn't fuel their resistance to Capaldi, because he's such a good actor. I mean, he's been on Torchwood, Children of Earth. He's, like you said, he's been on, he's on the Musketeers. He was in World War Z as a World Health Organization doctor, so it's in the credits saying WHO doctor, which I thought was just hilarious.
Yes.
So, just points for that, whoever came up with that one. That, he's established. It's not just some new guy you've never really seen much of before. There's precedent with Capaldi, and so you can say, like, in everything he's in, he's obviously a good actor. There's no reason to doubt that. So if nothing else, you should watch. I implore fans that are like on the fence going, I don't know if I'm going to check this out. Please give him a shot, because I think that it's going to be it's going to incorporate what older fans like myself loved about the series, is that this real alien guy. And it's almost kind of like what Christopher Eccleston's season and his Doctor, that kind of that reserved, like, I don't think he's going around calling humans apes like Eccleston did, but I think he's going to have that kind of detached aspect that, like, you're not really sure what this guy really thinks of you, and that's going to lead to some unpredictability, I think, and I think that's going to be a good thing.
Yeah, I am hoping for good writing, some good stories. I do not necessarily want a overall arc, even though I'm usually in favor of that. I'm looking for them to get kind of a new a fresh start with a new Doctor and do more individual episodes. I am very happy that, according to the rumors, there will not be a lot of romance. I have certainly, yeah, I mean, I am a big fan of Martha. Martha is one of my, if I had to pick one companion, I would probably pick Martha.
Totally.
Even though, Amy is amazing but, I think we've kind of done the romance thing a little bit, and I'm hoping for a different dynamic. So that's what I'm hoping. And I'm hoping we get a new interesting villain. Just because the monsters of the Doctor are all so amazing.
Right.
And there is such a history there that will be very interesting.
Well, we are getting the Daleks in, I believe, episode 2, and then the Cybermen for the series 8 two-parter finale.
Okay.
But I think the Daleks have to be I think there's some stipulation in the agreement with Dalek creators Terry Nation's estate that Doctor Who has to keep using the Daleks at least once per season, otherwise they will lose the rights to use them. So
I did not know that.
Yeah, and a lot of fans don't. So they're like, and so I think a lot of them are like, the Daleks again. And I can understand that because, yeah, it's like, okay, I would like a break from the Daleks as well sometimes. But I think that because of that stipulation in the licensing, that's why that happens.
And I am hoping that we wait a little bit on the Master.
Right.
Though I will trust I trust Stephen Moffat and will follow him the story he wants to tell, which is not necessarily the story I want to see. I think sometimes fans forget that.
I'm actually looking forward to the Master for the simple reason that I wasn't a big fan of how Russell T Davies wrote the Master for John Sim.
Okay.
I'm a big fan of like I said, because of being a Davison fan, Anthony Ainley, but then I went back, and watched the John Pertwee episodes. So Roger Delgado, the first Master, is just such a compelling character, and showed, he's kind of like Moriarty-ish, and that's how he was kind of created to be, basically the Doctor's Moriarty. But and I think with the right actor, with solid writing, the Master could be just a much more formidable force as opposed to just, like in his last appearance where he's just running around, devouring chickens, in minutes, and doing silly things like that. That in my opinion was not the Master.
One of the things that I'm a big fan of is the Silver Age Superman and Lex Luthor's relationship. And Smallville pushed on that a little bit, where they were friends, and Superman, always hoped that somehow him and Lex would find a way to become friends again.
Right.
Despite, Lex is, master criminal and everything. So it would be interesting to see that play with the Master and the Doctor, while they are definitely arch enemies, to have that mutual respect and such.
Well, that's kind of how it was portrayed way back in the day with Delgado and Ainley, especially with Delgado, because there was always that implied backstory of the two of them like growing up together on Gallifrey, and that they've known each other before, encountering each other in the series. That there was always this, tending the academy together on Gallifrey, and there was always kind of some kind of fan, perhaps just fan implied, but there was also the possibility that, well, maybe he's like the Doctor's brother, or he's somehow related to the Doctor. That they've always been connected somehow, which is that why they constantly battle so repeatedly in various incarnations, is that they just have this connection. And it is, like you said, it's almost like Superman and Lex Luthor in this sense. And I would really love to see that brought up again. and especially with the right actor. And I'm really hoping that I would actually like if the rumor that Game of Thrones Charles Dance being speculated as a possible master actually comes true, because I think he would be fantastic in the role, and I think he would play brilliantly off Capaldi.
Ooh, yes,
I
totally
For
agree.
those who don't know, I'm not familiar with the name, it's the guy who plays Tywin Lannister until very recently. Spoilers. That and he's just an incredible actor, and he's so menacing and so intimidating that I think I think he'd be a spectacular master. So that's what I'm hoping for. I don't know if it's going to happen, but let's hope.
All right. So we now you can now see that Charles and I can talk about the Doctor and the Doctor Who series for long time.
Yes.
But we're going to try to keep this episode a little short, so we'll end it here, except saying we want to hear from you. Charles, tell them how they can reach you.
You can reach me. For those who are not familiar with me, I write a blog of very geeky things called Damn Good Coffee and Hot. And you can just do a search for Charles Skaggs, Damn Good Coffee, and you'll probably find me. Otherwise, you can just go at charlesskaggs.blogspot.com and find me there. But I'm also on Twitter at Charles Skaggs, Skaggs, no C. And or you can find me on Facebook or Instagram also at Charles Skaggs. So that's how you can reach me. And Bessie?
And I am JWJ170104 on Twitter. Charles has the easier handle to remember. We are, so I'd love to hear your thoughts. We have created a Gmail address, nextstopeverywheremg@gmail.com.
SMG.
So, yes, SMG, thank you.
Yes.
nextstopeverywheremg@gmail.com. Please feel free to email us, send us tweets, give us your comments.
Yeah.
And we are going to count the days till the new episode.
Yeah.
Did you get your tickets to watch it on the big screen?
I have not yet, but I'm going to pick them up Monday because they just became active. But I'm definitely planning on after watching the episode, of course, live on BBC America. 2 days later, yes, for those who are not familiar, Fathom Events is doing this special theatrical screening of Peter Capaldi's first episode, Deep Breath. So check your local theater listings for August 25th. But yeah, I'm going to be a ticket, and I just love seeing Doctor Who on the big screen. I loved it with The Day of the Doctor, and I loved it again when they recently showed Rise of the Cybermen, The Age of Steel from David Tennant's era, and now I'm getting this, and it's so great to get my little sci-fi, closet fetish from way back in the day on the big screen these days. It just still blows my mind, and I can't be happier to live in the future.
So I don't think you were ever Charlie as a kid,
No.
but let's pretend you were. That the little bitty Charles that was visiting his relatives in Florida, if you could whisper to that kid, one day you'll see the Doctor on a big screen,
Yes.
no way he would believe you.
If I could go back in time, first thing I would say, what the hell are you doing? No, I would say, yes, everything is going to be okay. Don't worry. You won't believe it, but you're going to grow up, and you're going to be able to get Doctor Who on audio CD. You're going to be able to get it on what's called DVD and Blu-ray, and you can digital download. And people are going to be, actually aware of this more than you, and you can talk about it over this incredible thing called the internet, which you're going to love, and it's going to blow your freaking mind. So yeah, it was just it's a great time to be a Whovian, and I'm so envious of the younger fans because what they've got, just down the road, what they're going to be, comparing this era to is going to be just amazing. And the show keeps evolving, and I think that's one of the greatest things about the show is that it's always changing and growing and evolving, and it's going to be, as Exton put it so fantastic, so eloquently. It's going to be fantastic.
I totally agree. It is just wonderful. I'm looking forward to, it is just amazing to think that I'm going to be able to talk Doctor Who with you every week. So I hope everyone enjoys our pre-show special. Thank you for listening, and we got to come up with some kind of cute ending, but I don't have one yet. Like see you in the TARDIS, or I don't know.
That's kind of right. We need to work on that.
Yeah, we'll work on that. So for now, though, safe travels, everyone, and we will talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
If you would like to donate to help pay for this and other Southgate Media Group podcasts, simply go to our website, southgatemediagroup.com, and click on the donate button. It can be as little as $1 or, well, as much as you want. Help keep this fun going by supporting this and our other shows. Thanks again for listening, everyone. You're the best fans in the world.